From Mexican dragon fruit and water lily seeds to Miyazaki mangoes and ceremonial-grade matcha, we travelled the globe to uncover the stories and flavours behind some of the world's most expensive foods. Our first stop is Mexico, where farmers grow pitaya, a type of dragon fruit. A batch of 4,000 of these vibrant fruits can sell for $7,400. That's a sum that can make or break the economy of an entire town in Mexico during the growing season. Braving 30-foot-high cacti, sharp spines and sweltering heat is the only way to reach this incredibly sweet and juicy fruit. The pitaya is a type of dragon fruit. Once it is picked, time is of the essence. After 24 hours, the fruit begins to lose its flavour and texture. This makes getting pitaya to customers incredibly difficult and pushes the price higher depending on where you live. In Guadalajara, Mexico, a batch of 4,000 pitayas can sell for over $7,400. Getting your hands on some in the US can cost up to $22 for a bucket of 5 fruits. So what makes this fruit worth the painstaking task? And why is it so expensive? Pitayas grow on cacti, just like prickly pear and dragon fruit. They are often confused with dragon fruit because of the similarity of their names, pitaya and pitahaya. But unlike dragon fruit or prickly pears, which grow all over the world, pitaya can only be found in Mexico and some parts of the US. In the Mexican state of Jalisco, these spiky fruits become a major driver of the local economy when they're in season.
Lo que pasa es que la pitaya tiene mejor sabor, más color y es más dulce, pues. Como la tuna pone que sea tuna, pero no es el mismo sabor que la pitaya. Y la pitaya, como dice, es un manjar de los dioses aquí, porque pues la fruta pues es muy buena, pues todo el mundo la consume, porque tiene mucha fibra, muchas proteínas, muchas pues vitaminas y todo eso.
Trinidad has been working with pitayas for 15 years. He started as a picker and now runs a wholesale and retail business.
Empecé desde abajo, desde cero, con mi canasto en el lomo vendiendo por las calles, así empecé el negocio.
He usually harvests the fruit during the night time and into the early hours of the morning. Pitayas grow on a type of cactus called the organ pipe cactus. These cacti can grow up to 30 feet tall. To grab a pitaya at the top of the plant, Trinidad uses a long reed fitted with spikes.
Ya está buena, mira. Es chiquita blanca. Ya está buena, ya nomás, mira. Ya estas tan buenas, ya se baja, mira. Y ya casi vienen peloncitas, mira. El sabor viene siendo dulce, a media pitaya arenosita, muy sabrosa, de que puede estar recién cortada ahorita, ¿verdad?
Pitayas are available for a very short window. The season usually starts around mid-April and lasts 60 to 70 days, with the first summer rains dictating the end of the season. Unlike dragon fruit or prickly pears, pitayas grow in much smaller numbers. In general, an organ pipe cactus can give 1 fruit per day, or 60 pitayas, for the whole season. To start bearing fruit sparingly, the cactus needs at least 8 years. To reach full maturity, it needs 15. In comparison, at full maturity, a dragon fruit cactus can give 3 waves of fruit per season of 100 fruits each.
Hay árboles, pues, pitayas como estos, tú de perdida tienen 70, 80 años.
Once the fruit is off the cactus, that's when the race begins. Pitayas are made up of 85% water and are very perishable. They can only last 24 hours before losing texture and flavour. When Trinidad is done picking, he has to process the fruit straight away if he wants it to arrive fresh to his customers. Before they can be sold, workers have to quickly remove the dozens of spines by hand. While the spines are hard, the fruit is very fragile, so when cleaning, one has to be careful not to peel off too much skin. This would make the fruit more tender, and it would spoil faster.
Lo que pasa es de que, como es una fruta muy delicada, entre más cosas traigas en la mano, por decirlo así, un guante grueso, no sabes qué tanta fuerza puedas ponerle al agarrar la pitaya. Como esta, mira, que es bien dura, si yo, por decirlo así, le trajera un guante, o bien la apachurro, o con la fuerza que estoy poniéndole el cuchillo, saldría volando la pitaya. Entonces es preferible, más que nada, con la mano. Mayugas menos la fruta, y aparte que mayugas menos la fruta, la pitaya queda más.
At the peak of the season, Manuel can clean 3,000 to 4,000 pitayas a day. With this many pitayas, a good batch could be worth anywhere from $2,000 to $2,700. Pitayas are praised for their sweetness. They are also rich in vitamin C, fiber, potassium, iron, and calcium. And their seeds are rich in omega-3. Pitayas come in 4 colours: white, red, purple, and yellow. Despite being the same type of cactus, each plant will give a different colour pitaya with a different degree of sweetness.
Pero de esos colores hay muchas tonalidades. Hay varias amarillas, varias rojas, varias blancas. Y esta es la amarilla que te decía, mira. Esta es blanca, mira. Esta nosotros la conocemos como la gotita de miel. Esta pitaya que estoy pelando, mucha gente la conoce como las pitayas de los pillos, que vienen siendo mis abuelos. Son muy diferentes.
Because they spoil so quickly, there are a few ways that pitayas get distributed, each way determining the price. Manuel sells them at a stand that he has operated with his wife for the last 7 years.
Haz de cuenta que se manejan por canastos, y llegamos a tener hasta como 20, 25 canastos en temporada alta, cuando hay bastante.
Que te comes una y ahí está la espinita con la de que, déjame como la otra, déjame como la otra. A mí como vendedor me ha tocado conocer personas que parados aquí en mi puesto se han comido 50, 60 pitayas de un tamaño no muy grande, claro, ¿verdad?
Market stands like Manuel's are usually run by local families, but pitayas are not just sold at local markets. You can find Trinidad on the Colima-Guadalajara highway at the 49-kilometer mark, where he sells his pitayas from a roadside stand. Pitayas are cheapest when they're sold locally. In Mexico, the final price varies on the size of the fruit, but also on location. A batch of 4,000 high-quality pitayas that could be worth up to $2,700 in a local market could fetch over $7,400 for the extra hassle it took to rush them to the city. Andres runs a pitaya delivery company with his brother, Juan Pablo. They buy pitayas from wholesalers like Trinidad and Manuel and distribute them to customers in Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco, and the only place, apart from small towns, where pitayas are readily available.
Sí, con nuestro esquema de negocio que tenemos de repartir cada pitaya a domicilio, se ha abierto una gran oportunidad para las familias que viven aquí, porque te platicaba que realmente la forma de conseguirlas es limitada.
Getting pitayas out of town and into the city is a challenge. The pitayas have been off the tree for a few hours now, and there's a high chance some of them will not make it to their destination.
Es muy complicado también el tema de la logística porque tienes que cuidar mucho el producto, ¿no? Porque si lo andas paseando también se anda haciendo aguados, se anda haciendo pues, todos esos temas que pasa de la pitaya, ¿no? Entonces también tienes que cuidar que a un repartidor no lo mandes a tantos lados porque pues, va a andar paseándose y con el sol y así, entonces es muy común que cuando nosotros compramos la pitaya, a la hora de repartirla y así, tenemos un cierto porcentaje de merma.
This is why pitayas are extremely rare to find outside of Mexico. Only a handful of companies will take the risk to ship the fruits abroad, either by driving hours to cross the US border or shipping them first class. These are usually pre-orders that reach the customer directly rather than transporting the pitayas to another market stall. The final price will be double what a customer in Jalisco would pay.
Cualquier fruta que está en el mercado se mide por kilo, ¿no? Aquí se mide por pieza. Es muy especial este tema y se cobra por pieza porque es únicamente en Jalisco, únicamente en ciertos pueblos de Jalisco. Básicamente es el 90% de la fruta viene de esos pueblos. Los tienes que transportar hacia Guadalajara. Entonces todo ese proceso pues conlleva un gasto, entonces por eso se incrementa el precio, ¿no?
But it's the unpredictability of the season that plays the biggest role.
La gente lo paga 5 veces más del valor real, pero por el tema de que ya volvió la temporada de pitayas, hay poca, entonces hay que venderla más cara, ¿no?
In the last few years, pitayas have been even sweeter for locals. The demand is growing. Companies like Andres and Juan Pablo's are spreading the word outside of town, and the pitaya market is getting bigger. The weather has also been ideal for pitaya. In recent years, the rains have arrived a bit later than usual and brought less precipitation, lengthening the growing season. But this is not necessarily good news in the long term. While cacti thrive in deserts and the high temperatures allow their fruit to grow, they are not immune to extreme heat. A 2022 study found that 31% of the world's cactus species are currently threatened with extinction. By 2050, that number could increase to 90% as a result of the climate becoming hotter and drier. This pressure could make the pitaya an even more fleeting fruit. Even now, in full bloom, one season is not enough for locals like Trinidad to support themselves year-round.
De un negocio, suponiendo, no se vive uno solo, pues saque de otra cosa, de un lado sale, le vas tapando a otro y así te vas, pues no nomás. Pues como tengo varios negocios, pues no nomás vivo de una sola cosa, ¿verdad? Pues como dices, tengo la tienda, tengo la tortilla de abarrotes, la carnicería, tengo aquí todo esto sembrado de mezcal, tengo ganado, puercos, borregos.
This pair of mangoes just sold for 500,000 yen. That's almost $4,000. These are not just any mangoes. They are Taiyo no Tamago, or egg of the sun. Stunning, plump, red, perfectly unscratched, and incredibly sweet mangoes that are farmed in the Miyazaki prefecture of Japan. Every April, the best mangoes from the prefecture are auctioned off at Miyazaki Central Wholesale Market. But although farmers in Miyazaki dedicate an entire year to preparing these mangoes for auction, there's no guarantee that the fruit will fetch such a high price. That's because, before reaching the auctioning table, a mango has to be perfect, inside and out.
大変ですね。全てのマンゴー農家さんがうまくいってるわけじゃないと思うんですよね。
So why are Taiyo no Tamago mangoes so difficult to grow? And what makes them so expensive? Mangoes farmed in Miyazaki are from the Irwin mango variety, a type often referred to as apple mango, as it turns red when ripe. Irwin mangoes are actually pretty common, and are also grown in other parts of the world and sold at much lower prices. This is because the exclusivity of Taiyo no Tamago is not tied to which type of mango it is, but rather to the care it receives. In order to generate buzz at the auction, a mango needs bees. To increase their odds of success, farmers like Takuya usually rent bees during the flowering season. These are flowering mango plants. Bees play a crucial role in the pollination of the plants, as without them, mangoes would not grow as big as desired.
ミツバチにもよるんですけど、たくさんなった木には1本の木に200個くらいなるんで、これをまだ鳴らした方がいいからっていうので鳴らしてるんですよ。普段も落とすんですよこれ。だからマンゴー農家としてはこれ作るようじゃダメなんですね。ミツバチが交配しない場合は こういう小さい実になるんですね。もうこれ以上大きくはならないんですよ。
If a plant keeps flowering as the farmer wants, it can survive as long as 35 years. Takuya's plants are 20 years old. However, even if bees do pollinate the plants, it doesn't necessarily mean that all mangoes will qualify as Taiyo no Tamago this season. Only those that are in good shape, visibly contain pits, and are in good position will be given a chance. To successfully grow one, everything in the greenhouse needs to run smoothly. Temperature must be constant, the room ventilated, the air dehumidified, and the mangoes protected from gravity. When everything else is in place, Takuya's priority becomes the sunshine.
太陽の光が当たることによって実の色も赤い鮮やかになりますし、糖度も上がるんですね。やっぱり日陰にあると実の色も悪いですし、糖度も低くなっちゃうんで、やっぱり太陽の光はどうしても大事ですね。
If a mango slumps into the shade, Takuya will tie it with a string to bring it back up. And to make sure that sunlight touches every part of the fruit equally, he developed these light reflectors out of milk cartons.
反射板をつけることによってですね、マンゴーの実の下の方まで色がつくんですね。でこの紫のところが熟すと赤くなるんですけど、緑の部分が多いとですね、この下の方が熟しても黄色色なんで、できるだけ全てを赤にするために反射板をつけています。多分パック使われる方は今のところいないんじゃないですかね。硬いんで結構水平になるんですね。以前はもっと柔らかい紙を勧められてたんですけど、それだとこう下に下がっちゃうんでちょっと使いづらい部分もありましたね。
Regardless of how much it's worth, Takuya treats every mango with respect. In return, every mango repays him with a unique flavor.
甘みと酸味がある感じですね。フルーティーです。表面に傷が入ってますし、赤みも下の方まで入ってないんで、これは太陽の卵にはならないと思います。
Takuya has been growing mangoes for 16 years, a craft he learned from his father. This year, he grew 9,500 mangoes in his greenhouse. They're now ready to be inspected to see how many of them have earned the coveted Taiyo no Tamago title. The first inspection is done by human eye. Inspectors closely analyze each mango's appearance to ensure they are red all throughout, with no hints of green at the bottom. Then, a machine sorts them according to sugar content, weight, and size.
それから糖度が15度以上と重量が 350g 以上、規格で言いますと 2L 以上の基準をクリアしたものだけが太陽の卵になります。
These inspections sort the mangoes into 5 grades, 2 of which are Taiyo no Tamago.
木にもよりますけど、年間でだいたいよくて 13% から 15% 程度の発生率ということですので、だいたい約全体の1割がシーズンとして太陽の卵になりますので、結構割合としては少ない方なのかなと思います。
The mangoes will now make their way to Miyazaki Central Wholesale Market for the auction. All the care and hard work that Takuya and other farmers in the prefecture put into their fruit are leading up to this very moment. The hope is to match or exceed the previous figure of 500,000 yen.
でサイトの場合ってその時期に出す方って5、6人しかいないんですね。やっぱその時のやっぱ出される方ってみんなこうライバルみたいに感じなんで、やっぱ頑張んなきゃいけないなっていうのはすごい思いますね。
皆さんおはようございます。本日は令和4年の宮崎完熟マンゴー太陽の卵の解禁日となっております。
The auction has officially begun at the Miyazaki Central Wholesale Market. This year's 500,000 yen is 300,000 yen higher than last year and matches the 2019 record. And the farmer who grew these mangoes is Takuya.
すごいですよね。やったと思いましたね。
It's the third year in a row his mangoes fetched the highest price at the auction. They have been bought by a department store in Fukuoka.
そうですね、もう11時ぐらいの飛行機に私がもう手で直接持ってそのまま福岡市にある百貨店の中のうちの売り場があるんですけども、そこにも並べます。あと福岡から、この太陽の卵っていう果物を全国に知っていただきたいという思いからつけました。
Today's outcome was a successful one for Takuya. But even in a country with a strong gift-giving culture like Japan, it's not always guaranteed that such a luxury fruit will find a buyer at auction.
だからこういうコロナの状況で、いろんな消費者も物価が上がって大変だと思うんですけど、頑張ってやっぱり市場の人がですね、販売して仲卸の人が買ってもらってですね、やっぱマンゴーファンがいるんだなと。こんな状況でもコロナで大変な状況でもちょっとした値段がついても買ってもらえる状況があるなと、やっぱり自分のご褒美にしてる人がいるのかなと。
After flowering, fruiting, harvesting, and auctioning, Takuya's mango plants are ready for a new season. And the hard work isn't over yet.
花が咲いて実がなって収穫終わったらこの枝をまた戻します。一節戻してが剪定作業になります。やっぱハウスの中すごく暑いんでその作業は結構大変ですね。こう納得いかなかったら納得いくまでこうやるみたいなところがあるんで、スポーツやってたんで負けず嫌いなところがあって、やっぱ人よりいいものを作りたいっていうのはあるんですね。それがいいのかもしれないですね。
After these leaves are plucked, dried, and ground, they will turn into the finest matcha. But not all matcha is the same. The greener matcha is, the smoother and more complex its flavour. High-quality jade green matcha can cost 20 times as much as pale green matcha. And while this bright green powder takes a few seconds to dissolve in water, it takes an entire year to grow the plant it comes from. So what makes ceremonial-grade matcha so exceptional? And why is it so expensive? Matcha at its highest quality is referred to as ceremonial grade because of the central role it plays in Japanese tea ceremonies. Lower quality matcha, also called culinary grade matcha, can be made sweet with sugar and cream in desserts, but in its tea form, it's very bitter.
お抹茶っていうフレーバーというか、フレーバーとして広がってる部分がすごくあると思うんですけど、実際飲んだことない方の方が大半かなとは。
Jintaro is a 6th generation matcha producer. He runs a 180-year-old tea farm, one of the oldest in Uji, Japan, a city with a centuries-old tea history.
本当にこの2週間で1年間のお茶の味が決まるので、この2週間に全てをかけてやっていますね。
In spring, they sprout young, tender leaves, and that's the sign that matcha season has begun.
新芽の匂いですね。この匂いを嗅ぐと本当にこの季節が来たなと思います。本当に楽しみでもありますし、本当にチャレンジ挑戦でもありますし、本当になんていうかいろんな気持ちが渦巻く2週間ですね。体力的にはすごくしんどいですけど、精神的にはすごく楽しくできているかなと思ってますね。
To make matcha, he only needs the very first leaves of the plant. It's there that there's a higher concentration of nutrients, and they will make the best quality tea.
その旨味が強くて苦味が少ないものを目指して作りたいなと思っていたりするので、それをやっぱり実現するのは、本当にもう触れば折れるほど柔らかいので力は積むのにはいらない。古い葉っぱは逆に引っ張っても取れなかったりする。
At peak harvest, Collecting leaves can take hours, but the reason why the plants are in the shade is not to protect those plucking them from the sun, but to protect the plants themselves. Extensive exposure to sunlight develops bitterness in the leaves. Blocking the sunlight preserves their flavour and gives them a bright green colour. Before harvest in the spring, the plants spend 30 to 40 days in the shade. Gintaro uses rice straw panels to shade his plants, a method that's become extremely rare among tea farmers. Most farmers now use plastic nets. They're more convenient and can be reused.
ジメチルスルフィドっていうのりっぽい香りっていうのが、いわゆる覆い香と言われるその覆いをしたお茶から香る香りがあるんですけども、
Gintaro's plants spend double the time in the shade of what is recommended to make matcha, which is 20 days. While plants that make lower grades of matcha are harvested 2 or 3 times a year, ceremonial grade matcha is made from plants that have been plucked only once. After an entire day of picking, Gintaro's work is just getting started.
摘み終わってからも茶の芽はずっと息をし続けているような状態なので、できるだけフレッシュな状態で、蒸して乾燥させるために、そうですね、早い、その日中には絶対やりたいなというところです。昨日作業終わったのは、そうですね、本当に11時半から12時ぐらいで、キロに着いたのは、1時前でしたね。どういう蒸しをしたらいいのか、どういう乾燥したらいいのか、やっぱり最初の方の日にちのもの、例えばもう今日なんていうのは本当にちょっと一番気を使うところではあります。
The first step of processing of the leaves is steaming. Steaming locks in the flavour and preserves their bright green colour. But most of all, it prevents oxidation, which would turn them into black tea.
発酵酵素を止めてしまうということ、その緑を維持するという作業になるかなと。ただその蒸しの通し具合で
After steaming, the leaves go into this leaf spreader, a series of 4 mesh tubes where they're rapidly cooled by the wind. This eliminates the water on the leaves and prepares them for the next step, drying. The tea leaves at Gintaro's farm are dried using a 97-year-old furnace, which gives them a unique roasted aroma.
この風合いを守りながら、なるべく自分の理想とするところのいいものができるようにしたいなと思って。
After drying, the stems are removed and the leaves are sorted. Leaves up until this point are called tencha, and they will only become matcha after they're turned into a green powder. But before doing that, Gintaro usually tastes the unrefined leaves. He's very critical of his work.
いい感じ。蒸しは通ってますね。毎回します。やっぱりどういうものができたかっていうのが湯に浸すとすごく香りとかも分かりやすいので、結局乾物の状態でもある程度の香りは分かるんですけど、湯に浸した方がすごく分かりやすい。で、お抹茶になった時にどういう風になるかなっていう想像ができやすいですね。まあ具体的に言うと、色はうちのものにしてはすごくいいなと思ってます。あとは味も、苦みは全然なくて、それはすごくいいんですけど、旨みもなくはない。ただやっぱりなんというか、いつもそうなんですけど、結局理想はすごく高くて毎年って言ってると思います。よく諸先輩方にも共通して同じ気持ちだなって思うのは、本当に一生のうちに満足できるお茶ができるのなんて1回か2回ぐらいと。
Ceremonial grade matcha is ground using a stone mill. It's designed to grind counterclockwise only. This traditional method grinds a fine powder that preserves the nutrients of the leaf, but it's very slow. It takes Gintaro an entire hour to grind just 40 grams of matcha. With an automated crusher, this would happen in seconds. The matcha stone mills are some of the most traditional instruments in Japan. They're made of granite and are entirely hand-carved. Just one of these stone mills can cost over $1,300. It grinds the matcha into a fine, glossy powder. But once matcha is ground, the fragrance slowly disappears and becomes more delicate. So Jintaro usually grinds it one more time before selling it.
いただきます。やはり苦味渋みの少なさと旨味、朝日独特の香りと、あとは東園ならではの最古、日本最古の天茶乾燥炉ならではの少し火を感じるというか、香ばしいような香りが入っているのが特徴的かなと思いますね。
Ceremonial-grade matcha contains a higher level of an antioxidant called catechin and more chlorophyll than other green teas. This is as a result of the shading process and the slow grinding. While the Japanese public has long been familiar with the distinction between ceremonial-grade and culinary-grade matcha, it's relatively new to the rest of the world. But matcha's popularity has been soaring. In 2020, the global matcha market was worth $3 billion, and it's expected to exceed $5.5 billion by 2027. In the last 10 years, exports of matcha from Japan have doubled. Compared to 30 years ago, they've quadrupled. But these numbers barely refer to ceremonial-grade matcha. The lower costs of production, faster turnaround, and the ability to harvest leaves up to 3 times a year have made culinary-grade matcha a more popular choice for farmers. In Uji, only 60 families are left growing ceremonial-grade matcha. For Jintaro, taking over the family business wasn't an obvious choice.
お茶についてあんまり深く考えたことがなかったので、もうやりたくないんだよねとか言ってると、なんかそんな素晴らしいことって本当に世界的にも希少だよっていうこと。もう今では本当に仕事というよりも本当に半分なんというか趣味ではないですけど、非常に好きでやっているっていうところがあるかなと思います。
Once all this year's young leaves are picked and ground into matcha powder, Jintaro will spend the fall pruning the trees, ploughing and fertilizing the soil. Come winter, he will weave the rice straw to shade his plants, and new leaves will sprout again, ready to be turned into matcha.
今18年お茶に携わってますけど、理想のお茶っていうのは本当にできてないと思っていますし、ただ多分ずっとそうなのかなとも思っているんですけど、難しいんですけど、僕は本当にお茶が好きでやっているので。
Once popped, water lily seeds, also known as foxnuts, look just like popcorn. But a bag of seeds will cost you 15 times more, over $170 per kilogram. That's because, to achieve that pop, farmers in India work tirelessly for over 4 days, wading through water up to 4 feet deep, kneeling in the scorching sun and roasting the seeds in a carefully managed series of heated woks. Even when everything is done just right, there's no guarantee that a seed will actually pop. So, are water lily seeds worth it? And why are they so expensive? Makana, as they're known locally, are the seeds of the prickly water lily plant. Once they're popped, they are known as foxnuts. They're a popular snack in Bihar, India, the origin of 80% of the world's supply.
बेस्ट क्वालिटी मखाना आपको एक तो उसका स्वाद हल्का मीठापन रहेगा, और जो लो क्वालिटी है उसका टेस्ट आप कह सकते हैं एक सॉल्टी हो जाता है, नमक जैसा हो जाता है जो खराब मखाना हो जाता है, चूँकि उसका कलर ही चेंज हो जाता है, उसमें वो वाइट रहता है, ये हल्का ब्राउन पे आ जाता है.
On the surface, water lily plants look like lotus, gigantic leaves floating on the water. But the differences reveal themselves upon a closer look. Each plant is covered in thorns. These barbs pose the main danger to workers harvesting the seeds.
थोड़ा थोड़ा दिक्कत होता है इसमें, ये बात है, कांटा चूस जाते हैं, दिक्कत है, क्या करेगा गरीब लोग, जो कमाएगा नहीं तो खाएगा कहाँ से।
Lakshmi has been harvesting water lily seeds for 35 years. He belongs to the Mullah community, which has farmed and processed foxnuts for generations.
हाथ से उठाते हैं, देखो कितना है, 1 2 3 4 5 6 हो गया, ये सब में काटा है, 1 2 3 4 5, इसमें 5 फल है, कर गया, हाथ में चुभ गया, हाथ में चुभता है।
Harvesting is hard work. The seeds are at the bottom of the pond, and the water is not clear enough to see and avoid the thorns, so Lakshmi uses a stick to move the plants aside. Each plant can yield anywhere from 70 to 125 seeds. They need heavy rains in the spring to start bearing fruits, which contain seeds. When summer comes, the fruits start to rot and release the seeds.
तो वो गलने के बाद तो पहले पानी के ऊपर तैरता है, और तैरने के बाद जब वो धूप का टेम्परेचर से सड़ता है वो, तो नीचे सतह पे जाता है, मिट्टी में पकड़ लेता है वो मखाना का बीज, और जब वहाँ वो 1 महीना रहता है मिट्टी के संपर्क में, तब जाके पूरी तरह से वो मखाना तैयार होता है निकालने के लिए कीचड़ से।
But not all seeds are fit for harvesting. Some are deformed or unripe, and Lakshmi can't harvest them today.
ये भाटिया के लिए अभी तैयार नहीं हुआ है, पकेगा, छिलका गलेगा, काला होगा, बैठेगा जमीन पर।
At the same time, ripe seeds can't stay too long in the pond, otherwise they won't pop and will sell for less. Workers feel the seeds with their hands coming to the surface and direct them towards a special type of basket called a garja, which they use to clean the seeds and separate them from the mud.
ये अपने भागेगा, ये मिट्टी को तोड़ेगा, और मेहनत की चीज़ है, ये मखान का बीज है ये।
Despite their best efforts, collecting all the seeds in the pond is impossible. Water lily seeds are small and dense, meaning some seeds will sink to the bottom of the pond, where farmers can easily overlook them. Lakshmi and the other 4 workers start their day at 6 a.m. and end at 4 p.m. In this time frame, they harvest an average of 100 kilograms of seeds per day.
इसका कोई नियम नहीं है, कभी 2 कुंटल हो सकता है उसमें, कभी नहीं रहने पर, होने पर जो जैसे फसल है, फसल पैदा ज़्यादा हुआ, उसमें 2 कुंटल निकाल लेते हैं, अभी कम है फसल, कम हुआ, अभी पतला माल है।
A successful harvest has a lot to do with the weather. This has a direct impact on the size of the water lily flower, and in turn, the quality of its fruit and seeds.
पौधा बोला, पौधा में एक लाल लाल होता है, इतना बड़ा डंडी, उसमें जैसा कमल जानते हैं कमल, उसमें वो कमजोरी क्या हुआ, इसमें धूप आया, गर्मी आया, इस बात तो पहले हम आप लोग को बोले, इसमें गर्मी से ये ऐसा हो गया, इतना फूलना चाहिए, जैसे कमल को फूल होता है, इतना फैलना चाहिए, वो उसके धूप लग गया, खत्म हो गया, ये फूल खत्म हो गया।
Water lily seeds are harvested in 2 waves each season. The second harvest is even harder because there are fewer seeds in the pond and workers have to search for the seeds that have been left behind in the mud. While the first time around a pond can yield up to 150 kilograms of seeds, there could only be around 10 kilograms during the second harvest. Once out of the water, workers stomp on the freshly collected seeds to remove the outer skin. Then, they place the seeds back into the basket and take them back to the water to clean. All of today's harvest is then weighed. This moment will determine how much Lakshmi and the other 4 workers are paid. They usually receive 31 cents per kilogram in the first harvest, and 62 cents per kilogram in the second, as the work is much harder. Today is the first harvest. They collected 50 kilograms of seeds.
अभी इसमें कम फसल है, थोड़ा हुआ है, 50 किलो हो गया, 4 जन कितना हुआ, 12.5 किलो हुआ, 12.5 किलो कीमत कितना, 300 साढ़े 12 रुपया हुआ। उसमें क्या हम शराब पिएगा, क्या दारू पिएगा, क्या मछली लेगा, क्या मीट लेगा।
When the seeds are freshly harvested, they are worth 22 times less than popped seeds. To successfully pop a seed, it can take up to 4 days of work. At the processing facility, workers clean the seeds once more. The next step is to sun-dry the seeds to remove all of their water content.
गीला सा रहता है, तो खाने के बाद जो है ना गुड़िया पाउडर की तरह हो जाता है पाउडर। कच्चा गुड़िया फोड़िएगा तो उसमें गीला रहता है अंदर में, गीला सलाबा नहीं बनता है।
The amount and quality of sunlight the seeds receive is crucial in determining whether they will pop or not.
अगर हम मान लीजिए 2 घंटा हम सुखाते हैं, 2 घंटा में हमारा पूरी तरह से जो मखाना का अंदर जो स्टार्च है उसमें पानी जो सुखाते हैं 2 घंटा में, वो 2 घंटा सामान्य रूप से धूप मिलना चाहिए।
After 2 hours, the seeds are sorted and graded by size. Bigger seeds need more time under the sun, while smaller seeds will rot if exposed to too much sun. To know when the small seeds are ready to be taken out, workers can either bite into them or roast them.
और उसका ये स्टार्च देखा जाता है कि पूरी तरह से दाब के देखा जाता है फोड़ के, कि वो बिल्कुल जैसे बिखरे नहीं, एक दूसरे में चिपका हुआ रहना चाहिए। वही टेस्ट करते हैं, मेन टेक्निक उसमें वही है।
When the big seeds are dry, the whole batch is ready to undergo a gentle roasting in a clay wok. The seeds are still very fragile and can't withstand very hot temperatures.
हाँ, उसका टेम्परेचर ज़्यादा हो जाता है तो गुड़िया ख़राब हो जाता है, जल जाता है। और मिट्टी वाला में टेम्परेचर कम रहता है तो जलता नहीं।
This is the first real test to determine whether the seeds have a chance to pop.
उसके बाद आगे में जाके आगे में कलाकार बैठा रहता है, उसको जचैया करेगा कब होगा कब नहीं होगा। उसके बाद अगर जो देखता है हो गया तो घानी निकाल के रखता है, छिट्टा टोकरी में रखता है अपना।
Roasting is a 20-hour process. After the first roast, the seeds need to rest overnight for 15 hours. The next day, they're ready to be popped. It takes 10 people to roast 100 kilograms of water lily seeds. Out of these 100 kilograms, only 35 kilograms will pop and become good quality fox nuts. For this second roast, the woks are made of iron. The seeds are strong enough to retain heat, and that's what they'll need to pop. The seeds roast in a series of 6 different woks, so they can be carefully heated up.
देखता है जो हो गया और निकाल के अपना रखता है, नहीं तो एक ही में भूनते रहेगा एक ही तोला पे, तो इतना 1 कुंटल मखाना फोड़ने में आदमी को लगेगा 3 दिन लगेगा, ऐसे में 1 दिन लगता है।
When a seed is ready to pop, it will make a crackling noise, which is almost imperceptible.
वो केवल वो जो आगे में जो बैठा रहता है वही जानता है, क्योंकि उसमें गुड़िया निकाल के चेक करता रहता है सेकंड भर में। और क्योंकि इसमें जो है हाथ का इस्तेमाल रहता है, हम लोग को जैसे मान लीजिए हाथ का इस्तेमाल है, किसी गुड़िया में ऐसा होता है कम ताकत लगता है, किसी में ज़्यादा लगता है, तो इसीलिए जो आदमी का कलाकारी मानिए ना, आज जैसे आप लोग को दे दीजिएगा तो आपसे होगा नहीं।
To pop the seeds, workers use a paddle called a thapi. But even with the right technique, some seeds will just not pop.
अगर हम उसमें 100 ग्राम सीड है हमारा उसमें, तो उसमें 10 से 15% उसमें नुकसान हो जाता है। क्योंकि 10 सीड जो हम लोग हाथ में लेके फोड़ते हैं तो 10 का 10 लावा बनता नहीं, 10 पे चोट नहीं लगता है। वो टाइमिंग 4-5 सीड 2-3 सीड ऐसा होता है हर बार में, 100 ग्राम लगभग 8 से 9 राउंड में ख़त्म हो जाता है। हमारा 15 से 20 सीड उसमें नुकसान हो जाता है, उछल के भाग जाता है बाहर, वो मखाना नहीं बन पाता है लावा।
Once the seeds have been popped, they are cleaned and processed by size again in this machine.
ये जो ऊपर वाला जो ये लाल कलर का है, ये भी इसमें साफ होता है और पूरा वाइटनेस बना देता है, बिल्कुल फाइन बना देता है लावा की क्वालिटी को।
Rajesh's company processes about 30 metric tons of water lily seeds per season. Out of them, only 40% successfully pop and turn into good quality foxnuts. These popped seeds are now worth up to 550 rupees per kilogram. They'll reach 900 rupees or $11.16 per kilogram in bigger cities like Delhi, and up to $170 per kilogram abroad, where they're quickly gaining popularity. The seeds are rich in fibre, protein and antioxidants. Rajesh exports 40% of the seeds he processes, mostly to the US.
तो पिताजी जब करते थे तो हम 1998 से पिताजी के साथ कर रहे हैं, उनको हाथ बटा रहे हैं मखाना में। उस समय में मखाना का भाव 80 रुपये से लेके 90 रुपये किलो के बीच में बिकता था और वो मखाना लोकल स्तर पे हम लोग बिकते थे, क्योंकि उस समय में मखाना को इतना कोई जानते नहीं थे। पिछले 5 से 10 साल में हमारा इनकम समझिए कि जो पूंजी लगाते थे उसमें भी माइनस चला जाता था, क्योंकि बाज़ार नहीं था इसका। लोग पूजा पाठ में खाते थे तो इतना कंजप्शन होता नहीं था, लेकिन अभी जब लोग जागरूक हुए हैं, इसको खाने लगे हैं, तो पहले से अपेक्षा समझिए कि 30% ज़्यादा हमारा मुनाफा अभी बढ़ा है। अगर पहले हम कभी कोई सीजन में लॉस में चले जाते थे, कोई सीजन में 2 लाख 2.5 लाख।
This new market has created new farming opportunities in Bihar. The last few years have seen an increase in rainfall, which has made it harder to grow crops like rice and corn. As a result, some farmers have converted newly flooded areas into sowing areas for water lily plants. The local government launched a scheme to repurpose 104,000 hectares of abandoned lowland for foxnut cultivation. Today, 60% of water lily seed farming takes place in flooded lowlands, as opposed to the ponds and wetlands where the practice originated. And as the habitat of the water lily plant changes, so does the flavour of their popped foxnuts.
पहले जो होता था तालाब में होता था, गहरा पानी में होता था, तो उस समय का जो टेस्ट था और अभी जो खेत में हो रहे, दोनों में टेस्ट में अंतर है। उस समय का जो स्टार्च था वो थोड़ा मोटा रहता था, मोटा मतलब कि सीड बड़ा होता था, तो लावा का साइज भी बड़ा होता था। उस टाइप का अभी ये समस्या आ रही है, वो है खेत में करने से कम पानी के कारण वो समस्या आती है। अगर ज़्यादा पानी अभी भी करें हम 4 फीट पानी में, तो वो समस्या नहीं आएगी और टेस्ट में भी कोई चेंजअप नहीं आएगा।
Often referred to as the Wagyu of salmon, Copper River King salmon can cost up to $120 per pound.
For like retail price, $1,500, $2,000 right here.
That's 6 times as much as other wild salmon and 10 times more than farmed salmon. This salmon is extremely rare to come by. For fishers in Cordova, Alaska, it means spending entire days in dangerous waters, using life-threatening equipment and spending thousands of dollars on a permit. All with the serious chance of coming back to port empty-handed. So is Copper River King salmon worth the challenge? And why is it so expensive? King salmon, also called Chinook salmon, is one of the 5 species of wild Pacific salmon swimming through the Alaskan waters. The Copper River King is the largest and most nutritious of them all.
The color of the copper river salmon is just so vibrant. It's such a deep, deep red, and it's like one of those things when you see it, it's very obvious that that's a copper river salmon, and it just tastes so buttery. It's amazing.
Kyle and his crew set sail in the early hours of the morning from the Cordova harbor. It will take them 2 hours to reach the delta of the Copper River. King salmon will stay in the Copper River Delta for only 3 to 6 weeks. Kings are the first wild salmon of the season, and the start of the season is unpredictable. Although it roughly always falls around mid-May, fishers won't know it's time to set sail until less than a day before.
We typically have such a short window to fish. It's really important for me to be able to make quick decisions.
Go, go, go.
The unpredictable outcome of each fishing run not only affects the price of each catch, but also builds up the excitement.
That's insane. That's insane.
The location is the first challenge for Kyle and his crew. The delta of the river is very large, and not a lot of salmon swim in that area, so fishers like Kyle have to take their boats to shallow waters.
It's extremely dangerous to fish for a Copper River king salmon because they like to hang out in shallow waters, and when you're fishing in that area, you're a lot more exposed to Mother Nature. You know, the waves are crushing, they're breaking on top of you, and you're a lot more susceptible to capsizing your boat. We're about to pick our anchor, and then we're gonna make a set.
Once the anchor is set, the chances of catching anything are slim. King salmon makes up only a small percentage of the salmon in the Copper River. 90% is sockeye. That makes Kyle's job extremely difficult. Aside from that, local laws require he uses specific nets called gill nets. They're hung vertically to catch the fish by their gills.
Gill netting is an extremely effective way to catch these fish because each net is hand-built and completely customized. So, you know, for Copper River king salmon, we use a lot larger mesh size, around 6 inches, so the smaller fish swim right through it, and, you know, when we are able to locate a king salmon, they fit perfectly in our net. King!
Give me a second, I'll explain in a second. Should have pulled him over the bow. So what had happened was, you know, so king salmon, they're really large fish and they typically don't really get stuck into the net. They usually just wrap up. So it's imperative that you have a dip net to catch them in case they pop out. And what had happened there was, it was the first king of the day. I was super excited. I had the net underneath and it had already peaked and started to crown over the bow roller. And I tried to reach forward to pull it over, but because that it popped off and I was only holding the dip net with one hand, and because the king was so large, it overpowered me and it ended up swimming out.
But the same features that make gill nets such an effective way to catch king salmon are also what make using them so dangerous.
There are a lot of hazards and dangers using a gill net, specifically on deck for the crew, just because we are using hydraulic equipment to send the net out into the water. There's a lot of loose mesh that goes flying out, so any, you know, loose strings from a hoodie or shoelaces, all those are really prone to getting snagged.
Missed catches are common here in the Copper River. Even after spending his whole day out on the boat, Kyle has a serious chance of coming back empty-handed. That makes the fish that he does catch even more prized.
Yeah, go! Oh, woo! We just caught this toad of a Copper River king salmon. This one probably weighs probably 30, 35 pounds. And for like retail price, this goes like $1,500, $2,000 right here. And just for a size comparison, this is a Copper River sockeye salmon. Yeah, it's got a darker mouth. And then also on top of the spine, you'll see it's got spots along the line, and also this nice silver with spots on the tail as well. So this one right here is probably 22 pounds gross. It's a very beautiful, very fatty Copper River king salmon. Very excited that we got the first one on board. Day's getting started, and looking forward to catching many more.
The huge size of the Copper River king salmon is due to its migration. Wild salmon are born in freshwater streams like the Copper River and then migrate to the ocean as juveniles. After spending most of their lives at sea, they return to their home to spawn. For the kings returning to the Copper River, this means enduring a 300-mile-long journey against a 7-mile-per-hour current, swimming between glaciers, and gaining 3,600 feet in elevation.
Copper River salmon have the most intense salmon migratory route out of any salmon in the world. Because of that long journey home, it has a huge impact on the flavor of the Copper River salmon. Because the moment the salmon enter, they go from the ocean, the seawater, and they hit that fresh water of the Copper River salmon, their body automatically changes into reproductive mode. So up until that day that they hit that fresh water, they're just feeding and building up fat to make that 300-mile-long journey.
Go, 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 go. Nice.
39,000 kings are set to return home to the Copper River this year, 13% below the 10-year average of 46,000. Out of these 39,000, fisheries are only permitted to catch less than half to ensure enough salmon make it up the river for future generations. Kyle is only allowed to go out once enough salmon have escaped the fishing ground and have started to make their way up the Copper River. The catch limit is different every day. It can be reached at any moment, and when it is, Kyle has to stop fishing and return to port immediately. But he still needs to bring home enough to keep his business running, and fishing in the Copper River bears high costs.
If I came back empty-handed, it would cost me, it could be anywhere from $300 to $600 in fuel and probably a chunk of my pride.
For a company like Kyle's, fuel can top $12,000 a season, but that's still significantly lower than the cost of a permit to commercially fish in these waters, which is $250,000.
When I first started commercial fishing, I did not save any of my catch for myself. Just because I had taken on so much debt to buy into the fishery, I couldn't afford to save any of the salmon for myself. I eat salmon very regularly now.
All right, come in, come. Okay. Yeah, come. Oh! Oh! Holy shit. Go. Oh my God, we got another one.
That's 6 kings.
Oh my God. That's insane. Last other day we just brought in 7 Copper River Kings. Insane. Dude, that was bonkers.
Once Kyle returns to port, the fish must be filleted and packaged as soon as possible to preserve its nutritional value.
It takes us about a week to get our salmon to consumers. The moment our fishermen return to port, we'll fillet, portion, vacuum pack, and flash freeze for a minimum of 3 days. So then that way the seafood is consumable for sushi. It's considered sushi grade. They're so fatty, it's so oily, it's hard to hold on to them, they keep slipping.
Kyle sells his king salmon to fine dining and sushi restaurants, but also directly to customers across the country. Shipping out of Alaska can get very expensive because of its remote location. It costs him $65 to ship a 5-pound box of salmon from Cordova to New York. Due to an increase in demand, the price of king salmon has slowly gone up over the last 5 years. A pound of Copper River king salmon is now going for $100 to $120. Although bigger fish sell for more, huge king salmon are getting harder to come by. A 2020 study found that in the last 60 years, salmon in Alaska have been getting smaller, especially kings. Since 1960, king salmon have lost 8% in body length. Streams are warming earlier in the year, and salmon are making their migrations at a younger age and smaller size. There's also competition with other fish populations caused by hatcheries releasing the fish they produce into the sea. In the long term, this drop in size affects the salmon's commercial value, the transport of nutrients, egg production, and especially for king salmon, it reduces the supply for rural communities.
Salmon and seafood in Alaska is more than just more than a job. It's very deeply rooted into our traditions. We have very many rural communities in Alaska that rely on these wild salmon runs as like their only source of protein. So, they don't have, some of them, they don't have access to grocery stores. So it's really important that we have these salmon runs return for them.
This tiny berry holds over 4 times more antioxidants than a common blueberry and costs 34 times more. Bilberries, or Nordic wild blueberries, are sweet purple berries that grow wild in the forests of Nordic countries. But bilberries are very fragile. After just 2 days off the bush, their nutritional value begins to fade. To ensure the tiny berries hold on to their precious antioxidants, companies in Finland spend entire days sorting and freezing them at precise temperatures. That's because bilberries are highly sought after in the health food industry, where they're sold in the form of juices or supplements that can reach over $200 per kilogram. So, what makes these tiny berries so nutritious, and why are they so expensive? Bilberries are found in Nordic climates across the world, but only in Nordic countries are they harvested commercially. In Finland, so many bilberries grow in the wild that there's little need to cultivate blueberries on farms. Bilberries here are simply known as mustakat or blueberries.
We have different kind of blueberries. The ones we have in Finland that grow wild in the forest is called Vaccinium myrtillus. They have a blue outside and then they are purple inside.
Amanda is a third-generation bilberry producer.
When you go to the supermarket and you buy blueberries fresh, you will have the bigger blueberries with the white inside. And the white blueberries are not as tasty as the wild berries.
While farmed blueberry plants can reach 2 meters tall, bilberry plants are very small. They can reach a maximum of only 40 centimeters in height, so harvesting the berries by hand is the only option.
The bilberries are harvested by hand or like with the picking tools because the soil where they pick the bilberries is very uneven. So you can't have machines going because they can't go forward. So they have to walk to find the berries.
To harvest bilberries, workers use this specialised rake. It's designed to collect the berries without uprooting the bushes. It also has a long handle, so workers can reach the bushes without leaning down. But the berries are so tiny that keeping a safe distance is not always possible. Getting closer to the bushes also exposes workers to mosquitoes in the forest.
They are not allowed to use mosquito spray because it will be stuck on the bilberries. So they use the face masks to cover themselves so that they don't have mosquito bites and other insects.
An experienced picker will harvest 1 kilogram of berries in just 10 minutes. If the crop is good, each worker can collect over 100 kilograms in a single day. Professional pickers are seasonal workers. They are usually rice farmers from Thailand who come to Finland during the bilberry season. The bilberry season in Finland coincides with the monsoon season in Thailand, the off-season for rice farming. Bilberries need moist soil, so the best picking spots are close to water, either lakes or the sea. And where the trees aren't too close together, so the bushes have space to grow.
It's a very nice bilberry bush. Very sweet, very nice.
The size of the bilberries is heavily dependent on the weather. While farmed blueberries are watered more regularly, wild bilberries rely on rainwater.
The more you have rain and maybe heat, the bigger the bilberries will be. But like last season, we had almost no rain for a period of time, and the bilberries here in the southern parts of Finland, they were so small because they had not enough water. And if it's raining a lot, it's harder to pick because the leaves will be stuck on the berries because it's so wet.
Because of the delicate balance between rain, sunlight and the forest ecosystem, bilberries can't be farmed.
The nature is more rough than if you farm it. So when you farm it, you have more control over, watering and maybe pollination and everything. But when it's grown in the wild like this, you have no power over how much it will be raining or how much insects there will be pollinating the bilberries. When they are unripe, they are sour, but the more ripe they become, the sweeter the taste. It's quite insane how big they are.
In the Finnish market, the minute they are picked from the bush, the berries are worth €8 per kilogram, but they'll be worth €10 per kilogram later, once frozen. This is because bilberries are very fragile. They only stay fresh for a couple of days. After that, their nutrients begin to fade and they slowly lose their value. And while the picking season lasts only a couple of months, bilberries are extremely valuable to Amanda and her family company. They represent 50% of the business for an entire year.
It's very important that you have the right equipment and that transportation is working, because if you just wait one day too long, you won't be able to use the bilberries. So it's very important that the transportation chain is working so that you will have the bilberries processed and frozen as soon as possible.
Keeping the berries fresh comes at a cost and takes time. From the day they are picked in the forest, they will spend 7 to 9 days in the processing facility. Once the pallets with the bilberries arrive, they are weighed and frozen at -40°C for 2 days.
It's called individual quick freezing. If you clean the berries first, they are so soft, so they will be destroyed.
After freezing, they are emptied into bigger containers that can hold up to 700 kilograms. They'll then be stored in a warehouse at -18 to -20°C until a customer places an order. It's crucial that the bilberries stay frozen at all stages. Even a slight rise in temperature would spoil them.
When everything has to be in temperatures like -18 to -20 degrees, it's a big cost to keep these temperatures, and that will affect the price. The customer knows when they want the berries to be delivered, so they are cleaned according to the delivery schedule.
A blower removes the leaves, sticks and stones, as well as other types of berries caught in the batch. Bilberries have very small stems, which are extremely hard to remove. Amanda's company developed a machine just for this one step. The berries are frozen at -30 degrees, an even lower temperature than the one they're stored at. This allows the stem to come off easily, without damaging the berry, before going back to -18 to -20 degrees. Then the berries are sorted by size and graded into first class and second class bilberries. The final check before packaging is done by eye. Amanda's company processes 2 million to 4 million kilograms of bilberries a year. It exports 60% of its total crop to Asia, where bilberries have experienced a surge in popularity in the form of supplements. Companies like Amanda's export first-class bilberries abroad because they're more profitable. Second-class bilberries stay in Finland, where they're turned into juices and other products.
From the bilberries, we produce 2 different types of products. The mustika keitto, which is basically a soup. It's not a hot soup, but it's a very traditional Finnish product. And then we also make bilberry juice.
Marina's company processes 500 tons of frozen bilberries every year. While it takes 1 day to squeeze them and turn them into juice, for local customers, bilberry juice is still cheaper than fresh or frozen bilberries. Bilberries contain more than 4 times the antioxidants of farmed blueberries, which gives them a note of tartness. They are particularly rich in anthocyanin, an antioxidant responsible for their dark colour. These high levels of anthocyanin are due to the climate in which the berries grow. Low temperatures and darkness in the winter, and long exposure to sunlight in the summer. The high levels of antioxidants have made the tiny bilberry a big player in the health and alternative medicine industries. Bilberries have been linked with exaggerated claims like improving night vision, making people smarter, and even curing cancer. While there is insufficient scientific evidence to support these claims, the demand for Nordic bilberries is still growing. In just 10 years, from 2001 to 2010, the value of bilberry exports tripled to $370 million. The recent war in Ukraine has also played a role in increasing the demand for Nordic bilberries. Before the war, Ukraine supplied around 20 million kilos of bilberries for the food industry in Europe. With the supply chain broken, people have turned to Nordic bilberries. So far, it looks like the forests are keeping up with demand. In fact, there's no shortage of berries in Finland. An estimated 500 million kilograms of berries grow each year in the Finnish forests, between bilberries and others like lingonberries. Of the total bilberry yield in the forest, only about 3% to 10% is picked and processed. The Finnish government even encourages bilberry picking. Anyone can pick bilberries in the forest with no license at any time, and members of the public can then sell them to local markets tax-free.
And I think Finnish people, they are very careful with the forests. You know, it's a safe haven for them. We love the nature and we take care of it. We don't trash, we don't litter, you know, we take care of the forest. Imagine we have this just growing wild in the forest and that everyone is free to pick them. It's a luxury.
Once considered peasant food in South America, quinoa is now a pricey global superfood thanks to its highly nutritional qualities. And these days, quinoa can cost twice as much as rice. But it's royal quinoa, or quinoa real, that's the gold standard of quinoa. And it has sold for even more, with black royal quinoa going for $8,000 per metric ton in 2011. The price has at times climbed so high that many locals could no longer afford to eat it.
Entonces yo les preguntaba, pero ¿por qué no comen quinoa? Si es un alimento muy importante. Y me decían, ¿cómo voy a comer quinoa? ¿Cómo voy a comer plata? La quinoa es plata.
So what makes royal quinoa different from other quinoa? And why is it so expensive? While different varieties of quinoa now grow all over the world, royal quinoa only grows in southern Bolivia, near the Salar de Uyuni salt desert. It grows larger than other quinoas, and it's considered to be even more nutritious.
Es la única planta que puede producir en estas zonas. Es algo mágico la quinoa.
Here, at 3,600 meters above sea level, farmers still use traditional methods to harvest quinoa. Bolivia's mountainous terrain means it's difficult to modernize production, but the farmers also follow tradition to honor the earth and their ancestors.
O algunas familias ancestralmente lo hacían el arrancado de la quinoa, pero viendo el requerimiento de los mercados que están exigiendo, ahora hacemos el uso del hoz. La parte más difícil siempre es la cosecha, porque se requiere bastante personal. Los primeros días, en todo caso, ahí siempre se siente el resentimiento del cuerpo, porque no es una actividad cotidiana del día, es una vez al año. Y posteriormente, al segundo o tercer día, ya el cuerpo mismo se va habituando a la actividad.
The farmers drive over the quinoa with tractors to thresh it, or to separate the grains from the stems. Because of the high altitude, everything is done early in the morning to avoid the humidity. After the threshing, the quinoa is taken to be sifted, which removes any remaining stems. This usually takes place in the afternoon and depends on wind conditions. The quinoa needs to have all its saponin removed as well. Saponin is a bitter-tasting chemical that protects the outer shell of quinoa seeds from pests and disease. Royal quinoa also has a lot more saponin than other quinoa varieties, which is what allows it to grow in such extreme conditions. It also means cleaning the quinoa for consumption is a lot more time-consuming. The saponin has to be either thoroughly washed off or removed via special machines that won't damage the grains. And then, it's time for the grains to be separated for processing. While some of this is done by machine, many parts can still only be done by hand. This intense process drives up labour costs.
Esta inspección en laboratorio de control de procesos es a mano. Hasta ahora no se ha inventado ninguna máquina que pueda separar este tipo de impurezas, como la paja, como el cuarzo, como la piedra. Por eso tenemos que hacer un uso intensivo de la vista y de la mano, ¿no? Por eso es muy costoso, pero nosotros aseguramos así que la quinoa real sea la mejor en el mundo. En Hachainti recibimos aproximadamente entre 30 y 40 lotes mensuales, los cuales son procesados en esta planta. Estamos hablando de aproximadamente unos 1,000 toneladas al mes.
Because royal quinoa production happens on a relatively small scale, when global demand for quinoa first started ramping up in 2006, prices skyrocketed. In just 5 years, royal quinoa tripled in price on the international market, hitting $3,200 per metric ton. The coloured varieties of royal quinoa are even more expensive. Red royal quinoa is sold for around $4,500 a metric ton, and black royal quinoa nearly twice that. The UN even declared 2013 the Year of Quinoa to celebrate its health benefits and growing popularity, which only increased worldwide demand for it. Many Bolivians moved back to their rural hometowns to grow quinoa to take advantage of the profitable crop. In just 6 years, Bolivia's quinoa fields more than doubled in size, and many farmers stopped following the traditional method of allowing the land to rest every other year. The profits from royal quinoa were life-changing. People were able to build new houses and send their kids to school. Quinoa's hefty price tag, however, meant some Bolivians could no longer afford to eat it.
Nosotros íbamos para reunirnos con productores, pero en la alimentación no había quinoa.
But why was quinoa selling for so much? Well, in recent years, there's been widespread global demand for healthier food. And there's no healthier food than quinoa. UNESCO even named it the perfect food for humanity because it's gluten-free and has all 9 essential amino acids. NASA's astronauts eat quinoa during long space missions because the gluten-free grain is so packed with fibre, protein and vitamins, and is a great substitute for animal meat. Quinoa also contains phytoestrogens, which are thought to help prevent cancer and other diseases. And since royal quinoa is one of the largest varieties, it's considered to be even more nutritious. So, Bolivia's royal quinoa crops were extremely valuable. But the international demand for quinoa and unprecedented profits that came with it have spelled disaster for Bolivia's share of the quinoa market. The rush to produce more quinoa has caused severe soil erosion and infertility.
Podemos ver los efectos de ese trabajo intensivo de producción en quinoa real, que ya no producen nada, o salen algunas plantas, pero han quedado improductivas.
Many farmers have been focusing on quinoa instead of rotating it with other crops or livestock, which has drained the soil of nutrients. And with fewer farmers raising llamas, there's less manure to fertilize the land. Recent droughts and storms have also damaged Bolivia's royal quinoa crops.
El año pasado la cosecha ya fue mermada por principalmente la sequía. Fue un mal año. Este año tuvimos el fenómeno de la niña. Inicialmente una sequía donde necesitaba la planta poder desarrollarse en sus primeras etapas. Posteriormente se presentó lluvias permanentes. No permitieron que la quinoa pueda desarrollar naturalmente, porque la quinoa no requiere de mucha agua.
So production is down, and the quinoa plants themselves are much smaller than usual. And despite the high demands and low supply, prices have been falling.
Lo que pasa es que si bien hubo muy baja producción, la expectativa del productor es que los precios puedan subir. Pero no ocurre eso porque el mercado no lo manejamos. Ahora el mercado tiene mucha quinoa, entonces van a tener que alinearse a los precios competitivos que se tienen.
Other countries growing quinoa have more modern technology than Bolivia, so their crops haven't been as affected by weather conditions. Peru has taken Bolivia's spot as the world's top producer of quinoa, and even though Peru does not grow royal quinoa, and in fact no other country in the world can, most consumers aren't aware of the difference. The price of royal quinoa has dropped from $294 per 100 kilograms to just $83. Bolivia went from exporting 30,000 metric tons of quinoa in 2014 for $200 million to 33,000 metric tons for $81 million in 2018. Farmers are operating at a loss, and they're unable to invest in the equipment they would need to modernize. The fall in quinoa prices, however, has reintroduced quinoa into many Bolivians' diets.
En la caída ahora vemos que el consumo ha mejorado de la quinoa. Los precios ya son accesibles inclusive para la población de la ciudad, no como esas veces era tan caro que era muy difícil acceder a comprarse quinoa, ¿no? Hay un efecto interesante en que muchos municipios, el subsidio alimenticio, lactancia materna, está siendo utilizada la quinoa como base de la alimentación. Eso es bien importante, pero falta. El consumo de quinoa todavía en Bolivia es bajo.
Bolivia is also looking to rebuild a market for its royal quinoa. After all, the global quinoa market is valued at around $90 billion, and it's expected to grow to nearly $150 billion by 2026. In 2020, Bolivia's royal quinoa industry successfully obtained a protected designation of origin. This will help brand royal quinoa as a high-quality product you can only get from Bolivia, similar to Spain's Iberico ham or Italy's San Marzano tomatoes. Ideally, this will improve royal quinoa sales on the international market and allow producers to raise their prices, which will, in turn, allow farmers to modernize their methods while staying sustainable.
Bueno, contra el clima es muy difícil poder hacer alguna acción, pero sí podemos mejorar la parte biológica, la producción. Podemos incidir en que estas pérdidas no sean como las que se está viendo, sino que sean menores, mejorando la fertilidad, reponiendo la vida del suelo y que sean más productivas. Eso podríamos y estamos haciéndolo, ¿no?
The key to real Dijon mustard is in its seeds. While other types of mustard use white seeds, Dijon is made with these black ones, which give it a tangy, sharp flavor. Named after the town of Dijon, France, very few of the black seeds used to make Dijon mustard actually come from France. But the few jars made with local seeds will cost you up to 6 times more than average Dijon mustard. So what makes real Dijon mustard different, and why is it so expensive?
Quand même beaucoup différent que les autres moutardes, parce que les goûts, il y a la fruité, puis l'acidité, bien fraîcheur, parce qu'il y a dans le moutarde de Bourgogne, il y a de la ligotée aussi, donc ça qui donne la fraîcheur.
The jars of Dijon mustard made with local French ingredients are sold as Burgundy mustard, the name of the region where it has been made for centuries.
C'est parti. Donc vous voyez, la graine de moutarde est très petite. C'est une graine qui fait moins d'1 millimètre de diamètre. Et pour produire 1 kilo de moutarde, on a besoin d'à peu près 30 à 40% de cette matière première. La graine est belle. Hein.
The mustard plant is a cruciferous vegetable, like cabbage, broccoli, horseradish, and turnip. The plants are rich in pods, which are their fruit. Each pod contains several dozen mustard seeds. Dijon mustard is made with black mustard seeds, which are more aromatic than the white ones used for other types of mustard paste. They have a high level of sinigrin, which is the natural component that gives mustard its pungent aroma.
Avant de pouvoir utiliser les graines, celles-ci sont déjà nettoyées l'espace de quelques minutes pour enlever toutes les impuretés. Donc on le voit ici, hein, on a déjà les graines qui, au contact de l'eau, déjà commencent à se séparer en 2 phases, à savoir l'amande qui est jaune à l'intérieur et l'écorce qu'on appelle chez nous le fond de moutarde, qui est brun, qui est la partie brune et qui commence à se séparer déjà.
One of the factors that sets Burgundy mustard apart from regular Dijon and keeps the prices high is that it's ground using a stone mill. This is a much slower process than using an automated steel mill. Stone mills can grind only 100 tons of seeds per day. The resulting flavor makes it worth it. It preserves the spiciness of the seed by keeping the paste at room temperature.
La pâte de moutarde reste toutefois fine, mais la diffusion des arômes se fait de manière plus importante et on n'a pas cette sensation de chauffe qui annihile à la fois le piquant et les saveurs du produit originel dans la moutarde.
To give Dijon mustard its distinct creaminess, the paste goes through a sieve, which extracts the yellow kernel from the rind.
C'est une turbine qui tourne à très haute vitesse, qui est micro-perforée, et le son de moutarde qui est plus léger va être extrait.
Dijon mustard used to be made with verjuice, a green juice made from unripe grapes, which added acidity and preserved the mustard. As the recipe evolved, producers sought to recreate its fruity flavor using a combination of white wine and vinegar. These two ingredients are still used in most Dijon mustard today, while Burgundy mustard is made with wine only. This wine comes from a local grape variety called Aligoté, which carries hints of the chalky, potassium-rich soil of the region.
Et puis j'ai commencé à utiliser des moutardes chez Faro depuis plus que 20 ans. C'est-à-dire quand j'ai travaillé au Japon, j'ai commencé à utiliser les moutardes de Bourgogne. Mais malheureusement, à cette époque, il n'y a pas de moutarde de Bourgogne chez Faro au Japon. Là. Donc mon chef japonais qui téléphonait chaque fois son copain en France, donc lui qui apportera aux moutardes de chez Faro au Japon.
While the town of Dijon and its surrounding region, Burgundy, produce 90% of France's Dijon mustard, finding local seeds is much rarer. Most producers get their supplies from other countries, with Canada growing 35% of the world's supply of mustard seeds. Using foreign seeds is more convenient and can be up to 50% cheaper than using French seeds. In 2021, France produced only 4,000 metric tons of seeds, far from the 32,000 metric tons that are needed to meet the country's national demand for Dijon. Local seeds also require extra care. The use of pesticides is banned, and in recent years, late frosts in the spring have been destroying mustard crops in Burgundy.
La production de graines de moutarde en France n'est clairement pas suffisante pour répondre à l'ensemble des besoins français, et notamment pour une raison très simple, qui est le coût de celle-ci, qui est beaucoup plus important. Et c'est un peu paradoxal qu'une graine de moutarde qui viendrait du Canada.
The shortage of local seeds is part of a steady decline over the last century. But what made local farmers give up on growing mustard was a 1957 European Union policy.
La politique agricole commune en Europe a orienté davantage les subventions données aux agriculteurs pour des pratiques agricoles qui étaient autres que la moutarde, à savoir le colza, qui est une plante qui est assez similaire et très proche même de la moutarde en termes d'aspect. On la confond d'ailleurs souvent, parce qu'elle a également des fleurs jaunes, mais qui n'a pas les mêmes fonctions, et on ne peut pas du tout produire cette pâte de moutarde avec du colza.
The few jars on the market of Dijon mustard made with local seeds are now called Burgundy mustard. It became a protected label in 2009, similar to other products like champagne. It was launched as a collective effort by local farmers, scientists, and mills to reintroduce the crop in the region.
Ça nous semblait essentiel dans la mesure où, on l'a vu, le produit moutarde de Dijon avait un petit peu perdu de tout son sens.
Today, of the over 300 mustard mills once present in the region, only 5 remain, most of them industrial. From its very seeds to the final bottled product, Burgundy mustard is facing many challenges. Late frosts are killing both mustard plants and vineyards, making raw material even rarer and more expensive, while the ongoing war in Ukraine is driving up glass prices.
Pour le consommateur, le prix de la moutarde a augmenté mécaniquement. Sur cette année, on est à peu près à une hausse de 9% versus l'année dernière du coût de la moutarde au kilo.
This is dancing the rice. It's a traditional technique to extract this ancient rice grain from its hull. It's just one of the many steps that members of the Ojibwe tribe perform to savour the grain. Known as manumin, meaning the good berry, this type of wild rice has been harvested by the tribe in the Great Lakes region of North America for centuries. A pound of it can sell for $24, 15 times as much as white rice. For the Ojibwe people, harvesting this rice means much more than money. It's a way to connect with their ancestors and pass on their traditions to future generations. But as the rest of the world discovers this ancient grain, the tribe fears that it will lose its importance and that it will be separated from its natural ecosystem. So, what is the meaning of Manumin? And why is it so expensive?
We're heading over to one of our tribal lakes that's on the reservation. This lake is 100% owned by the tribe. People say you can't own the water, but this is a reservation lake.
While most wild rice on the market is cultivated in paddies to ripen all at the same time, Manumin still follows the natural cycle of the rice plant. This difference has not gone unnoticed, and the grain's popularity has been growing for decades. But for the Ojibwe tribe, Manumin is sacred. They continue to harvest it by hand, which is one reason it can sell for twice as much as cultivated wild rice.
See, everything has a life, has a spirit. So that's why we offer tobacco to whatever we're doing.
Lee Lin is the rice chief of the tribal band here at Mole Lake. It's here that Manumin grows. Every fall, when the season begins, Lee Lin heads out to the lake with his cousin Chad to harvest the rice.
Right now I'm push-pulling Chad. Chad's our picker, I'm the push-puller. We're looking for the rice right now. The puller's job is to look for the rice and put him on the rice so he can pick it.
Looking for the rice on top. You know, like right here you can see there's rice kernels on top, a couple of spots. And even if there's nothing there, I'll still grab it and pull it in. Something could fall off. The rice, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Every time you would say miigwech, miigwech.
To harvest the rice, Chad, the knocker, uses a set of wooden sticks to knock the rice directly off the plants into the canoe. As a knocker, Chad is following in the footsteps of his grandfather, who used to harvest Manumin as well.
I made this set myself the year he passed. And then this set is the set that he made the year before he passed. Makes me feel good.
As he works, he thanks the plants for today's harvest.
Miigwech, 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 miigwech.
Saying thanks also dictates a rhythm for picking.
That's the best sound in the world.
Unlike cultivated rice, Manumin doesn't all ripen at the same time. So Lee Lin and Chad must set out in the canoe multiple times during the season.
It's small in your hand, but after a while of being out here, it adds up. I mean, we were only out here for an hour and about a quarter of our boat is covered.
But what's here on the boat's floor isn't the size of the final harvest. Within this, they'll often find unripe rice and hulls with no rice inside at all.
Green rice, when we're talking about green rice, it's actually green rice. And this black rice here is ripe. There's years where we get what we call a ghost rice. The ghost rice you'll have the hull of the rice and there'll be nothing in it, it'll be empty. Some stocks don't always grow.
When Manumin is sold, it usually sells for around $24 per pound. The price varies depending on the overall harvest, the stock, and the buyer's connections.
You know how people refer to oil as black gold? This is our black gold.
Now that Lee Lin and Chad are back from the lake, it's time to dry the rice. Depending on how ripe it is, it may need to be soaked overnight.
See, this rice we didn't really have to get wet last night just because it's already starting to ripen really good.
The whole community gets involved in the drying process. It's a great opportunity for young tribe members to learn from their elders. Air drying is the first step in separating the rice grain from the hulls. Removing the hulls further reduces the size of the overall harvest, But today's trip to the rice beds has been more successful than harvests in recent years.
This year we had some nice grains. It was long, it was fat. So this year your percentage of rice would be about 80-20. 80% of the grain you'll probably lose 20% with the hulls.
We're actually converting that rice from a medicine to a food. Whenever that wild rice has moisture or water in it, it still has a life.
Removing moisture is important for the following step: parching the rice on a wood fire. It's done in a metal pan with a wooden paddle.
This part is going to be the coolest part of the tub, and this is going to be the hottest part. So you're going to put this up on the fire, and you're going to actually see this actually turn brown as it starts parching.
If a grain retains too much moisture, it'll pop, just like popcorn. But the separation of the grains from their hulls is far from complete. To do that, Roger makes a shallow hole in the ground, pours in the rice, and covers it with deer hide. He then dons a pair of soft buckskin moccasins and threshes the rice by stepping on it. This step is called dancing the rice, and Roger takes it quite literally.
It looks like the twist, but it's the Anishinaabe two-step. I tell everyone, I said, this is how I got my wife of 47 years now.
The poles he uses are not for balance. He uses them to transfer his weight to avoid breaking the rice. Roger's two-step was successful. Once separated from the grains, the hulls are so lightweight, they fly away like dust. And that's exactly how they will be filtered out, by tossing the batch in the air from this birch bark basket. Nowadays, dancing and tossing the rice can also be done by a machine.
Yeah, you got 2, 4, 6, 12 moccasins. 12 feet working at once instead of 2 feet working at once. As it rotates, it's taking the hulls off. You can see that there's long grain. There's some that's a little broken up. That little broken up stuff is good for soup rice.
Despite this faster method, the tribe places great importance on continuing to dance and toss the rice by hand.
There's elders that always told us to pay attention because someday you're going to be teaching this. As a kid, I just kind of laughed about it and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be that guy, but here I am teaching everybody what I know.
But while a good return is important, the tribe doesn't harvest to make a profit. Manumin is only sold when needed.
You can't just buy this on Amazon. I'm sure that there are certain individuals that will sell it on the internet. It's all about people who are around here who can make connections with somebody who does this. It's all about those relationships and how they what price they're willing to give for a pound of rice.
Manumin contains 3 times more protein than white rice, more vitamin B than brown rice, and is rich in antioxidants. These values have made it an essential part of the Ojibwe diet for centuries, together with berries, fish, meat, vegetables, and maple sugar.
Well, yeah, there is many different ways to make rice. You can add wild rice to just about any kind of dish. I mean, we got berries with wild rice, walleye cheek chowder with wild rice.
Our rice doesn't even compare nutritionally to white rice, or even Uncle Ben doesn't even have anything over us.
Mole Lake is fully owned by the local Ojibwe tribe, which carefully controls the flow of water and monitors its minerals. No motorboats are allowed in the lake, and duck and goose hunting is prohibited during the rice picking season.
We don't allow lead shot to be used when we shoot the birds, because then that settles into the into the sediment, the plant will uptake that lead.
This is a ancient rice bed. I mean, we had rice that was carbon dated 800 years ago.
For Leland and Chad, harvesting manumin isn't about collecting every last grain of rice from the plants. Not all the rice falls into the canoe, and that's okay. The rice that falls back into the water will reseed the lake for the next season.
We believe that you take what you need, not what you want.
Over the last 200 years, the ecosystem that supports manumin has come increasingly under threat. The tribe was forced to cede lands to the federal government in 1837 and 1842, and even today regularly receives multi-million-dollar offers from different suitors to sell the lake.
As manumin becomes more popular, a lot of non-tribal people who haven't done this, they want to go out and try and do it for themselves. So one of the concerns is that they don't know how to do it, because they can actually destroy a rice bed by when they're picking, they hit it too hard. They're trying to get everything off of it.
Although the harvest was good this year, this isn't always the case.
There's been people that would come off the lake daily with 200 plus pounds. There are years where you come in with an average of 150 pounds. This year seems to be one of the best.
Over the past century, the hand-harvested manumin habitat has declined by a third. Water pollution, oil pipelines, fluctuating water levels, rising temperatures, and invasive fish species are all factors threatening the delicate ecosystem at Mole Lake and other lakes where manumin grows.
There are other lakes around here that do have rice, but then, it's not as big of a grain as what we got, or, it ain't as thick as what we have here on this rice lake. This is the reason we're here, is because of this rice. We fought over this rice to live here.
What Leland is referring to is the Battle of Mole Lake, a clash between native tribes that killed 500 people in 1806.
People were getting pushed from the east to the west, and Lakota happened to be some of them, Sioux happened to be some of them, we happened to be some of them, but our people just never left, and they weren't going to leave this area because this is where the spirits told us to stay.
It's essential that the lake has a constant supply of fresh water to avoid any sediment buildup, which would prevent nutrients from reaching the rice plants. As custodians of the lake, local harvesters do what they can to manage this natural resource.
This water isn't always at this level. The creek down here, we got a dam in the water that we build every year, and so we can bring the water up.
The same grain, but domesticated by farmers and grown in paddies, can now be found at a fraction of the cost and is often mislabeled as wild rice. But for the Ojibwe tribe, naturally grown manumin has a value that can't be easily counted in dollars and cents.
What people know as wild rice is not what we call it. We call it manumin, and it's the good seed or the good food. And people say that it's wild, but it was put here for a purpose for us.
These ants produce a delicacy known as escamoles. Sometimes called ant caviar, these larvae can cost $50 per pound. But to find them, harvesters have to reach inside nests with thousands of ants. A nest can produce escamoles for decades, but poaching and the climate crisis are threatening this centuries-old food. So what do these larvae taste like? And why are they so expensive? Escamoles are small bean-shaped larvae that are high in protein. Here in Mexico, they've been eaten for centuries. They have a buttery, earthy flavor and gently pop in your mouth. Locals say there's nothing else quite like it.
They may have this similarity to an egg, but it's actually the larvae, the pupas of the future queens.
Jose is a chef and farmer in Mexico. Today, he's searching for escamoles with his uncle Armando.
Yo cuando llegué aquí hace 10 años, te digo, tenía 30 nidos aquí y eran los que empecé a estudiar. No hay ninguno, no hay nada. El primer nido que encuentro yo de aquí es a más de 1 kilómetro de distancia.
Harvesters monitor nests throughout the year, but the actual season is short, from late February to the end of April. They head out when the sun is low, because strong UV rays could actually kill the ants. But to find escamoles, Jose first needs to find a nest.
Eso, pero es entrenar el ojo. No es tan sencillo que digas, ¡ay, mira, aquí van hormigas! Porque además la hormiga mide de 3 a 5 milímetros y se confunde por su color, se confunde muy fácilmente con el entorno.
Once you find the nest, you have to understand how to open it in the most secure way for them and for you as well.
Another sign that you've found a nest? The smell. After 11 years of harvesting, Jose can quickly identify the pungent, farty smell.
Depending on the strong smell, you will be able to define if you open it or not.
Once Jose determines a nest is ready to harvest, it's time to reach in. The larvae are about half a meter down, so Jose uses his whole arm and maguey leaves to scoop up the ants.
The ants do bite, and they can be, one bite is not very strong, but when you have hundreds of them on you, then definitely you will have a sort of reaction.
But even with hundreds of ants crawling on him, Jose has to be careful not to damage the nest.
You need to keep your product the most intact as possible, so if you crush the nest, then everything is gone.
Escamoles right out of a nest look like this. But harvesters can't take everything. Jose leaves around 30 to 40% so that the nest will continue to function. A properly harvested nest can produce larvae for 20 years. But if a nest is damaged, the ants could die, cutting off the supply of escamoles. But the hard work isn't over yet. Back at his farm, Jose carefully cleans the escamoles. A process that's straightforward, but delicate. At a restaurant in Mexico, a few grams of escamoles cost around $15. But the price fluctuates a lot.
It's very common to have it around Easter. So before Easter, the price will go high, and then after Easter, it will slowly start to drop. Kilo can vary from 1,300 to up to 2,200 pesos. So after a quite long morning, this is what we came up with. 70, maybe 80 grams of escamole.
Jose tries to share his knowledge about escamoles to encourage sustainable harvesting. At his family's farm, he prepares escamoles with serrano peppers, onion, and aloe vera flowers.
The texture is a burst of amazing flavor. It's sort of like a little balloon that just explodes in your mouth with this liquid that's magnificent. So now we add the escamoles. If you talk to older generations, and the moment you mention escamoles, they will automatically have a memory. It's like something they've been eating for quite a time, but not necessarily very often. Younger generations have been very skeptical on insects. For younger generations to take that leap of faith and understand that they're going to be eating one of the most amazing foods that they have in their country.
Jose sells his escamoles directly. but harvesters who work with a middleman often get cut out of larger profits. One article from 2016 described Escamoleros getting less than $5 per pound from middlemen. But for some rural harvesters, working with an intermediary is the only option.
El escamolero, vamos a decir, tiene un inconveniente grave. El escamolero puede caminar 10 kilómetros a un nido, ¿sí? Hace la extracción. Vamos a suponer que sea en la mañana. Si no lo trae bien cubierto y no se viene sombreado, vamos a decir que se venga por un camino donde encuentre ciertos árboles y todo eso, cuando él llega a su casa a las 3, 4 de la tarde, ese escamol ya se agrió, ya no sirve. Si él saliera a vender ese escamol, gasta más en traslado para irlo a entregar que lo que va a cobrar.
Escamoles are most commonly eaten in Mexico, but when they're exported, the price can more than double. In 2019, a chef in Florida reportedly paid $237 for a pound of escamoles. These high prices have caught the attention of inexperienced harvesters who don't know how to extract escamoles sustainably. Another problem is poachers, who take larvae from farms and undercut the market price.
Por la necesidad misma de obtener un ingreso. En este momento ya no es por darse el gusto de comer escamol. En este momento ya es para poder vender X cantidad de escamol y ganarse 100, 50 pesos, desafortunadamente. Ya pasó de ser un platillo tradicional familiar en cierta época del año a tener una demanda a lo largo del año.
The restaurants need to understand that there's a certain quantity that's available and that's it. You can't create more, you can't invent more. That's what makes you appreciate everything when you're cooking and how to treat them with respect and not overwork them.
For now, Jose and his uncle are focused on teaching rural communities how to harvest sustainably.